What we're going to be covering this week is the checkout process utilizing wooCommerce. The checkout process can become complex because there's a lot of ways that you can customize and configure the options. So we're going to talk about some of the most common ways. If I go into the backend section of my WordPress site and go to WooCommerce settings, one of the options that I have available is the Checkout tab. And the Checkout tab is where I can select the options that I want to have for users that are going to be checking out from my store. As you can see, once you come to the Checkout options area of the settings portion, you have sub choices that are available. And this is going to give you information specific to the various payment types. We're going to look at some of these sections in separate videos, but I'm going to just give you an overview on how you can configure the default checkout options. The first area that we have is the checkout process, and you can see that we have different configurations, one for coupons and one for checkout process. Checking enable the use of coupons is going to allow the buyers to be able to use coupons at the cart and checkout pages. Obviously, using coupons can be quite beneficial and it can help to increase your sales. If you didn't want to accept coupons, you could uncheck this. We will be working with coupons in a separate video, so I'll teach you how you can actually utilize coupons in another video. The next options is something that's available if you want to accept multiple coupons. And so this has to do with how the coupons are actually added onto your cart. Again, this is going to be up to personal preference and you're going to have to decide what works best for your business. The checkout process is where you're going to be able to specify how you want guests to be able to check out from your store. So when a new customer visits your online store, oftentimes they won't place an order or buy a product instantly. They might first look around the store and scroll through the products and then leave without creating an account. Sometimes customers might want to shop as a guest, which means that they can complete the checkout process without creating an account. And you can go ahead and allow customers to do that by checking Enable Guest Checkout. You can definitely increase sales with this type of configuration, because it allows a person to not have to enter quite as much information and to set up a password and all that kinds of stuff, and sometimes people don't want to do that. A drawback is that you might be collecting duplication of specific data, and you might not be able to track your customer trends as well. Even with that being said, I still recommend that you enable guest checkout. When it comes to making a payment online, customers are super concerned about the security of the transaction and of giving their credit card details. They might not want to share their private information on the web unless they are sure that the information is secure and not accessible to just anyone. This option is going to force secure checkout, which is going to ensure that the checkout process is under a secure socket layer connection. Remember that Secure Socket Layer, or SSL, is the standard security technology for establishing an encrypted link between a web server and a browser. And this link is going to ensure that all the data that's passed between the web server and the browser is going to remain private. In order to make this happen, you're going to need an SSL certificate, which is going to include files of data that bind the security key to your online store. Most hosting companies are going to offer this as part of their service, but some do require that you obtain the SSL certificate separately or that you purchase that. If I do check Force Secure Checkout, you can see that I get an additional option, which is to force HTTP when leaving the checkout. That will take the user back to an unsecured area of the site once they're done with the purchasing process. This can sometimes speed up your site, so you might want to go back to HTTP. The caveat, though, is that many websites, the whole website is under a secure socket layer. So this might be a moot point. But again, you're going to have to figure out what your settings are, who you're hosting with, and whether you've decided to use a secure socket layer on your site or not, but I do highly recommend that. For our purposes here, I'm going to leave this unchecked because we're just going to be working with a demo site and we're not going to actually be collecting any real information. The next section is where you can specify where users are going to be directed when they are in the checkout process. The default settings tend to work just fine, and you can see that the cart page is going to the cart page and the checkout page is going to the checkout page. If you wanted to change those, you could. You would need to update these pages and add the appropriate shortcode. And if you're curious as to what the shortcode is, you can go into your pages, and if you look at either the cart or the checkout page, you're going to see that there's some text that appears within these square brackets. This is a shortcode, and this is the code that defines this as the WooCommerce cart page. There's one for the checkout page as well. I'm not going to change anything because the default settings are just fine, but if that was something that you wanted to do, you could make that change. So the cart and the checkout page are added automatically, and you probably don't need to make any changes here. Terms and conditions, though, is something that you're going to need to specify. It is highly recommended that if you have an online store, you create a terms and conditions page where you will specify any terms that are associated with your particular store. If you do create a terms and conditions page, and then the user goes through the checkout process, they're going to be asked whether they agree to the terms before checking out. Again, this is an important part of the process. If you only have like a 2-week period for the user to return a product, you need to make sure that you're letting the user know what those terms are and making sure that they agree to them before they actually make a purchase. In order to link the terms and conditions page, you will have had to create a page. Now, I made a super simple page that doesn't actually have any content because the content is going to be unique based on your store. But I will go ahead and set the terms and condition checkout page to my terms and condition page. The other options that we have are the checkout endpoints, and these are the pages that the user will end at once they've paid, once the order's been received, once they've added a payment method, etc. I'm not going to change anything here. And then the final section is where you can see a list of all of the payment gateways that are installed and that you have the ability to use on your site. So once again, we haven't actually added anything. These are the default ones. You can see that check payments, cash on delivery, and PayPal are all enabled in my store. Direct bank transfer is not enabled, so this gives me a summary of the payment options that are available. If I click any of these items, it's going to take me to the pages that are associated with those items that's up here at the top. We'll be looking at some of these more in detail when we discuss the different payment options. If you've made any changes to the checkout process section, don't forget that you'll need to save those changes and update them for your store.